Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to be cooking from the second Outlander kitchen cookbook, and we're going to be making lamb stew. Now, I hadn't really planned on making this. We did not have a good experience with our last lamb recipe, but I have a co-op meat subscription box, and they recently started having lambs, raising lambs and sending out lamb, and they sent me a pound of ground lamb. So I decided that we would go ahead and make this. This is a quick stew made with ground lamb. It's not like an all day kind of thing, which is great because, you know, it's almost dinner time. So we're gonna try it and we're gonna see what we think. I'm gonna start with not like a soup pot, but a large skillet. So I've got my sort of high-sided skillet. I'm going to turn the heat on to high. I'll probably be turning it down a little bit because my high is pretty high. And I'm going to put a little bit of vegetable oil. This is grapeseed oil. I'm not going to measure it, but not that much. But we want this to be pretty hot, just smoking. So while that starts to smoke or starts to get real hot, I'm going to open my lamb. It might be a little bit frozen. Oh, there we go. It's starting to smoke a little bit. But while it's real hot, I'm going to break this up and put it on the bottom of the pan in sort of pieces. It is definitely kind of frozen. All right, so I'm going to turn this down to sort of medium high just because I don't want it to burn while I wash my hands and all of that. So now I have, I'm sorry, this is going to be hard for my sound guy. I have the salt and pepper from the recipe, and then in here I have cumin seed, coriander seed that I have toasted and ground with my spice grinder, coffee grinder. We're mixing this all together. And now we're going to sprinkle this all over the lamb. So we have toasted spices on this channel before, and if I can find that, I'll link it, but it's really easy. Dry pan, not very high heat, for not very long. And now to the lamb and the spices, I'm going to add these onions that I have julienned. So basically I just cut them root to tip. Into relatively thin slices. There we go. The goal here is to let that meat brown without moving it. She says about 5 minutes. I feel like, I know I'm moving it. I feel like the pan was really hot, so I'm just going to try to break up some of the bigger pieces without really moving it. Just because mine was frozen. You can see this piece has gotten a lot of good color, but as soon as I start stirring this around, it will cool it down and it will stop it'll stop browning as nicely. So I'm trying really hard. It's against my nature Trying really hard not to mess with it too much right now. I'm going to call this done and I'm going to start stirring it now. I just don't want it to get too burned, especially with those spices on the bottom. That is getting pretty. Some of those spices got pretty brown, so hopefully it won't taste burnt. Right. She says once the lamb is no longer pink, you can start adding the other ingredients, and I want to go ahead and do that real quick. First, I have a bottle of amber or dark ale. I have chosen, since at the time of filming this, it is almost Christmas, I have chosen a Christmas ale, because A, that's what we had in our house, and B, it is almost Christmas. So we're using this Christmas ale that is brewed with honey and spices. So hopefully that will not be a poor choice, but I guess we'll see. And then, in addition to that, we're adding some tomatoes, just a can of diced tomatoes. I chose some that were not fire roasted. I'm sure fire roasted would also be delicious, but I just didn't want it to be too, the recipe didn't call for fire roasted, so I just didn't want it to be fire roasted without that being a thing. Anyway, I said fire roasted an awful lot. Now we're going to add some carrots, which were sliced about 1/2 inch thick on the diagonal. And I've got my potatoes that were chopped just sitting here in water so they wouldn't brown. And she just said chopped. I went for a relatively small chop. There we go. And the only other thing we need to add to this now is green lentils. So I've measured out the amount in the recipe. And we're going to stir all of this up. And we're going to get my lid out because we're going to cover this and simmer it for about 20 to 30 minutes. As soon as those vegetables are tender and the lentils are cooked, you can eat this. So let me get my lid. So I'm going to get my lid and I'm going to cover it. It was boiling in there. I'm going to reduce it to kind of a low temperature. I do want it to be simmering, so I'll check that. It's not simmering right now, so I'm going to sort of start it at medium, turn it down a little bit until it stops simmering, and then turn it a little bit back up. And that's about it for this stew. It's a really, really simple, really, really quick stew, so hopefully we'll like it. But we'll show you what this looks like in 20 to 30 minutes when I decide that it's done. I checked mine at 20 minutes and it was not, the potatoes and the carrots were not done to my liking, but now they are. And I'm going to taste it for salt, seasoning, basically. I think it needs a little bit more salt. So I'm just going to add a little salt. And I'm not quite ready to serve this, so I'm just going to turn it down and let it sit. I mean, it's a stew, so it will be fine. It definitely does not have nearly as much of the gamey flavor that we had on our previous lamb dish, so that's good. We may actually be able to eat it. Anyway, I'm going to let this sit just covered at very low heat because she says to serve this with over a rice pilaf or colcannon, which is mashed potatoes and greens, usually cabbage, I think. I'm just going to make some plain rice to serve it over. I mean, there are potatoes in it, and carrots, so you could serve it just by itself if you'd like. She also says to garnish it with some fresh parsley or cilantro, which I already have some parsley here chopped up for garnish, but I'm going to go ahead and make some rice, plate it up, show you what it looks like, and let you know what we think in just a second. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make lamb stew from Teresa Carle-Sanders' second Outlander Kitchen cookbook. And this was a very easy stew. It wasn't something that has to cook for a really long time. She says to serve it over rice, well, I think she said rice pilaf or a mashed potato type dish. I don't think you really need that because there are potatoes in it, so you could eat it by yourself or serve it over plain rice like we did. The only sort of difficult step is toasting and grinding the spices, the whole spices, which you could skip and just use pre-ground spices, and that would be fine. I did not enjoy the spice flavors in this recipe. I think I would have enjoyed it better sort of as a plain lamb stew, a more traditional, less like the coriander seed and the cumin just sort of overpowered the flavor, which maybe was fine for the rest of my family because they don't like lamb. It did not have any of the gamey flavor for me that we got a lot of in our previous lamb dish from the Outlander Kitchen cookbooks. The rest of my family liked it just fine. I just didn't love it. My husband, who is highly attuned to the lamb gaminess, said he could still taste it himself, but it was not too bad. It was fine. He still ate it. He still liked it. So if you like lamb, feel free to make this. You may or may not enjoy that spice in there, but can't tell unless you try it, right? I don't have a problem with those spices in other dishes. I just felt like it kind of overpowered this one, and it wasn't really what I was looking for in the flavor at that time. I was looking for more of a sort of comforting stew. And if you don't like lamb, you could, of course, make this with beef if you prefer, and it would be fine. But otherwise, it was really easy to make. If you enjoy it, if you decide to make it, let me know in the comments down below. And if you've enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else next week.